Hi guys, so today I want to react to interesting maps you maybe haven't seen. Before we start, I think it's only fair that we give credit to the original creator, which was General Knowledge. His channel link will be in the description, as will be his video. So let's start.
Maps. We all love them, at least I do. In the maps in this video, we essentially get to see information about the world, whether it's in current times or back in history, representing some event or some characteristic of our countries. The fact that the data is displayed on the map allows us to distinguish between regions and or countries, which I think makes it really interesting to look at. So here are a few interesting maps you might not have yet seen. First, the map of the Treaty of Tordesillas. This map divided the newly discovered.
Okay, so let me put my knowledge on this. So basically, the Kingdom of Castile was pretty much Spain. Pretty much Spain was divided into two kingdoms at the time. I don't remember what the second kingdom was. I think it was like, I don't remember what exactly it was called. Uh, so basically, this map divided the world between Castile and Portugal. So this is what Castile got, and also this little part. And Portugal got all of this. That might seem like a bad deal, but you have to consider a few things. Like it's not like Portugal got all of this land. It's like pretty much that any new like island or any new land found in this area would pretty much belong to Portugal, including this little tiny sliver of Brazil, which would eventually get a lot bigger, and this partial part of Greenland. Though I'm not sure if they actually got Greenland, because Greenland came under the control of Denmark, so don't know exactly what happened there. And Spain had landed in Central America and had found a lot of gold, and probably thought that the rest of the continent, of both the North and South America, had a lot of gold. And had it, it would have been like very, very rich, and they would have wanted all that new land. But it didn't. It was pretty much only this area that had that much gold in it, and maybe a few parts of South America. And also, none of the other countries really consider this to be official, because they didn't really recognize this treaty, because, you know, all it did was pretty much just put them at a disadvantage. Pretty much said that any island in this area was pretty much belonged to Portugal. So of course they wouldn't really accept this.
Lands outside Europe between the Portuguese Empire and the Crown of Castile, so pretty much Spain. Portugal would have the east and Spain would have the west. It was signed in 1494, and the first line in purple divided the Americas, leaving only a small part of Brazil for Portugal. The second line in green was added in 1529.
Oh yeah, this one, the dotted purple, I think was the first treaty, and I think this pope was favored the Kingdom of Castile more and gave them a better deal. And I think the second time, the Pope favored Portugal more.
To allow the Spanish to colonize part of the East Indies as well. The treaty existed because after Columbus discovered lands for Castile, he met with the Portuguese king first. The Portuguese were upset and threatened to occupy these lands, which he said were rightfully his. At the time, Castile couldn't match the strength of the Portuguese navy.
I think that's pretty cool that even though Portugal was a lot smaller than Spain, and I think was smaller than the Kingdom of Castile, they were still more powerful at sea, at least. And it really goes to show that it doesn't matter how big your country is, that doesn't really determine how powerful it is. Uh, oh, and also I don't know exactly why the King of Portugal said that those that the discoveries belonged to him. But I do think there was a good reason. And I think that Spain wanting to get the rest of their have the rest of the continent kind of come uh, under their control, came up with this agreement.
And so they agreed on a diplomatic solution. Pope Alexander VI formalized the separation of lands with this map. The treaty was eventually replaced with later ones, and other powers like England, the Netherlands, and France never really accepted or recognized this exclusive division. Next, keeping with the colonial theme, European influence. In this map, we can see how Europe has.
Wow, you can see that's a lot of green and a lot of there's a decent amount of I don't know what this is, teal and yellow too. There's very few oranges. So this little piece of purple is land is purple because it's French Guiana, which is pretty much a part of France in South America. Pretty much like an old colony that never got became a country, mainly because I think the people there identify as French and want to remain part of France. We can see a couple of other places that aren't even under European influence or part of Europe at any time. We can see Burma, what I think is now called Myanmar. We can see Liberia, which makes sense because it used to be a I was about to say it used to be a colony of the U.S., but basically I'm pretty sure it was founded by a group of freed slaves. I think it was freed by the U.S., and I think they pretty much founded their own country here, and they kind of have a symbolic tie. So I think it makes sense that Europe wouldn't try to colonize that, because that might anger the U.S., and since the U.S. was considered a rising power, they probably didn't want to do that, even though at the time they probably could, you know, defeat them. And what else do we have? We have North and South Korea. No influence or never really colonized by Europe, but probably did have Japanese influence since it was under the control of Japan when Japan invaded during the Second World War. And then we have Japan itself, which I think had tried, the Mongol Empire tried to colonize Japan, but this part, which I think is called the Sea of Japan, pretty much just said no because it was very violent and destroyed all their ships. So let's continue.
Has stretched out its power and influence throughout the world, at least back in history. The biggest evidence of this is in fact the colonial period from the 16th to about the 20th century. Pretty much all of the world was at one point or another under European influence, with a vast majority of it having actually been colonized or fully controlled.
Oh, and also, I forgot to say, Nepal and Bhutan weren't a part of the British India. I think that's a common misconception, but Nepal and Bhutan were never part of the, British India, so.
Others, like China or Turkey, had very heavy influence by European powers in terms of investment and trade, and China even had some of its actual territory colonized as well, like Hong Kong, Macau, and other regions.
Yeah, I think the UK only gave Hong Kong back to China very recently, like not in the 2000s, but I think like 1990s, I think, somewhere there.
Ceded to France and Germany. It's also interesting to see how some current countries fully adopted the European state model, if you will. I feel like the ones in America are the best example of that, as well as Australia and New Zealand, while others gained or regained their independence and kept their local indigenous customs, like India or some African countries.
Yeah, I think mainly because, well, Canada remained a British colony for quite a while. I think it's not until like the 1940s when they actually gained independence. And the U.S. Wanted to continue to trade between the U.K. They consider, like, I think probably the biggest trading partner, and it was probably important then that they shared the same language. And plus it was like the natives there, unlike in, like, let's say India, they were pretty much not citizens. So all that there were people from Europe, mainly from the UK. So it makes sense that they would have the same language.
Only a few countries like Japan or Korea have never been colonized by Europe, although influence is something which is hard to measure, so I guess arguably we could say they were influenced as well at one point or another.
I like he's not technically wrong, but pretty much every country every country on Earth has influence from another country. But I think Japan probably has the least influence out of this until like maybe after World War II when they were occupied by the US and I think briefly by the UK. But anyways.
In this next one, we see the most popular sports in the
I'm going to skip this. This doesn't have anything to do with history or geography, so. And then he talks about Pangaea with today's borders, which is cool again, but it's not really what I'm interested in talking about, so.
entire world. As a fifth map, here are the countries in the world which officially don't use the metric system.
So we have the US, Liberia, and Burma or Myanmar. So basically, the US, why they don't use the metric system, I think, is because they've already started using the imperial system before this. So I think it'd be a little difficult to switch now. I also think mainly because a lot of US citizens don't want to switch, because it kind of makes them different from other countries. I think we should switch as an American because it's just so inconvenient to others to have to try to do conversions. Like sometimes if you see my videos, I do conversions when I'm talking about feet or miles. I usually put like in kilometers or meters. Oh, and we also have Liberia, which I suspect is because they have close ties with the US. They're not like a major trading partner or anything, but like I said, like it's founded by a group of freed slaves, and I think it was freed by the US. So it's probably they probably to continue to use the imperial system for this reason. And I think if the US were to switch to the metric system, they would also do that. I'm not exactly sure why Myanmar hasn't done it, hasn't switched to the metric system, but let's continue.
Until recently, only 3 countries had not adopted the International System of Units, also known as the metric system: Burma, Liberia, and the US. However, despite not using them officially, some use it in certain aspects, like the US with their military in order to ensure interoperability with allied forces, particularly with NATO. In the meantime, both Burma and Liberia
I think the US also uses it in the scientific community. Like using science, we usually use millimeters, centimeters, and stuff like that instead of inches.
have said to have been taking steps to fully implement the metric system as their definitive measuring system.
That makes sense. It's a lot more convenient for it and the world, especially when you have to trade with other countries, because it's like you have to convert all the measurements to something else. Like let's say you get like instructions to do something, you'll have to convert to find out what you have to do. And it's not that bad when you have only a few of those, but since you're when you're a global power like the US and you get like a lot of instructions from other countries of what to do, you probably will have to, it'll be a big mess for you. That's why I think we should switch.
And I believe currently they have at least a dual unit system. And even the US, they use the metric system more than we realize. They use kilometers for their races, a 5K race or a 100-meter dash. Their bottles use liters, their medicine uses milligrams. In fact, in 1975, President Gerald Ford signed it into law, declaring the metric system the preferred system of weights and measures for the United States trade and commerce. But I guess it just didn't have much success in fully being implemented with the whole of the population. Now we move to how the world would look if mapping conventions were...
Since we're about halfway through the video, or a little bit more halfway, more than halfway, I'm going to stop it at that, and I'll probably react to part 2 maybe tomorrow or in a few days. That's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more content. Also, leave a comment down below letting me know what I should do for my next video. See you next time.